Hey, I'm Dominic Perez. I am the CTO for Curtiss-Wright Defense Solutions. I'll be moderating, I think, the rest of the sessions for today. We've got Dr. Malek Ben Salem. She is the Managing Director of Emerging Tech Security for Accenture. We heard from the government this morning. We'll hear from industry now. She is a PhD from Columbia, and amongst her many accolades, she is also a cybersecurity fellow from New America. So, thank you and welcome the doctor. Hi with the applause.
Yeah, hi everyone. Really delighted to be here with you today. So this is supposed to be an overview talk. I think we've already, jumped into the weeds already this morning. So please bear with me. I'm going to try to zoom out a little bit and give you an overview of what I think post-quantum cybersecurity will look like. All right. So.
Excuse me, is the screen going to keep flickering like this?
Apparently.
Yes.
So I think we all agree that quantum computing is going to be the greatest. Yeah, sorry, I know it's going to be distracting. So it's going to be the greatest threat to asymmetric encryption. Will break RSA, Diffie-Hellman, digital signature algorithms. Not as much of a threat to symmetric encryption, and we've known this. Does it help to have the slides at all, or?
That's up to you.
Is it better to have them blinking, or is it better to get rid of them?
Just tell the story. Turn it off. Pull the cord.
We'll stick with blink. Okay.
Sorry?
We'll just stick with that slides for
Okay.
now, if you don't mind.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't see them either here, so.
Oh, maybe
Yeah.
you can unplug your end? Unplug your end. You can back.
Oh, well.
Your laptop not go?
No, I see them now. So we've known this since 1994, right? With when Peter Shor came up with its algorithm. This is why NIST has embarked on its journey to come up with replacement post-quantum crypto algorithms. And now we've gone, so far, NIST has announced its replacement algorithms last year. They are in the process of being standardized. So we need to get ready for Quantum Day. The question is, when do we expect Quantum Day? You've seen a slide before that talks about that survey of when experts expect Quantum Day. Roughly 80% of the expert survey think it will happen by 2050. 2/3 think it will happen by 2040, and about half of them think it will happen by 2035. So that's the time frame I'm going to work with.
Back to the microphone, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. So 2035 is what I'll be working with throughout this talk. And to me, that's when Quantum Day will happen. So how will cybersecurity look like by 2035? What I'd like to focus on in this talk is not paint a picture of all cybersecurity, but really focus on the key elements that are somewhat related to the quantum technology. Either they are, quantum driven or rely on quantum technology, or they are technologies in response to the quantum threat. So the first key element of post-quantum cybersecurity, we've heard it this morning, is going to be post-quantum crypto. Post-quantum crypto certainly going to be part of the picture. The new algorithms that NIST has been working on, both on the digital signature side and the CAM algorithms, will be part of the cybersecurity picture. We've known what has been announced. Kyber has been selected for CAM. The three algorithms for digital signature, dilithium, Falcon, Sphinx Plus, we've already heard that. Shall I stop? Let me change this, sorry. So the first element, as I mentioned, is post-quantum crypto. Kyber was selected as a CAM algorithm. Dilithium, Falcon, and Sphinx Plus are the digital signature algorithms. As we've heard this morning, Falcon was chosen because of its smaller digital signature, and Sphinx Plus was chosen because it's not a lattice-based algorithm, so to provide some diversity, if you will. The second element is quantum random number generation. This is a technology that exists today. It relies on the physical properties of quantum to generate truly random numbers as opposed to the pseudo-random numbers that we use today. This is a key component because we know that the security of our system basically, or the encryption algorithms we use today, really rely on that element of randomness. So we need additional entropy to generate truly random numbers. And this technology is available today. It's pretty much on every Samsung Galaxy S3 phone. It's been deployed on many automotives, used for infotainment systems. It will be part, it has several applications, so not just security applications, but you'll see it deployed for gaming applications, for instance. The third element is crypto agility. Now, crypto agility is not necessarily technology. It's basically a mindset, if you will, and a set of technologies to be adopted. It's a recommendation to enable companies and organizations to be able to adopt new crypto standards, new crypto algorithms and protocols in an agile manner, especially throughout this migration to post-quantum crypto, because the algorithms, I know I'm going to be controversial here, but the algorithms are, to my view, are still immature. At least their implementations are immature. And because we don't know what we don't know. There will be advances in cryptanalysis. There will be advances in quantum computing capabilities. So my recommendation, at least to my clients, is that they need to consider adopting this crypto agility mindset. If they're interested in being secure, not necessarily being compliant. If that's the status they strive for, then the best practice is to be crypto agile. And crypto agility brings about lots of advantages. With crypto agility, you can remediate crypto vulnerabilities swiftly. You can automate compliance. You can adapt quickly to evolving security policy. You can adopt new cryptographic features, and you can lower your costs. And not only that, you're expected also to have fewer breaches. And Gartner actually thinks that organizations that do adopt a crypto-agile approach will suffer 60% fewer breaches just by having that adaptability in place. The fourth element of post-quantum cybersecurity is quantum key distribution. We've heard that Dustin talked about this this morning. Quantum key distribution basically is the other way of responding to the quantum threat, if you will. So it complements post-quantum cryptography. Instead of responding by changing the algorithms, you can respond in a way where you distribute the encryption keys through a different channel, through a quantum channel. Obviously, many people have their reservations regarding post-quantum crypto, including our friends at NIST. Some of the arguments against quantum key distribution is that it's a partial solution, does not offer authentication, is that it requires special equipment, the sorts of quantum repeaters that are required to repeat the quantum signal as it gets distributed throughout channels, is that it requires higher infrastructure, namely fiber optic cables. But I argue that we have a lot of that infrastructure already in place, and we keep deploying, more fiber optic cables by the day. So I argue that it doesn't have practical applications, but we have already seen implementations and pilots of smaller networks, if you will, where quantum keys are being distributed. Not only in Europe and China, but even in the United States, in the DC metro area, in the New York metro area. And the other argument is that there is a high risk of denial of service because, it's known that if an adversary is listening on a quantum channel, just by them listening, the sender of the qubits will realize that somebody's listening, and therefore that makes the qubits that were transmitted obsolete because somebody has listened to them. And if the adversary keeps listening all the time, then by that approach, they can create a denial of service because everything that you're communicating is no longer secure. On the other hand, with the current technology that we have, if we diversify the channels that we distribute the qubits through, then we can avoid that denial of service attack. So I think that this technology has a future, and it will definitely be part of the post-quantum cybersecurity picture to complement at least post-quantum crypto. The fifth element is quantum communication. This is the general case of quantum key distributions, right? Here, you're not just distributing keys through quantum channels, but you're communicating through quantum channels. And if you recall, 1969, when the current internet has started, that was the ARPANET, and this is what it looked like, just 3 nodes. Today, we are at the same state when we talk about the quantum internet. And this is where we're going to see quantum communications in the future. So we may be in a very early stage today, but I have no doubt that at some point we'll have bigger deployments of these quantum nets. Again, this is, in the US, Delft University with 3 nodes, but there are similar networks in Europe and in China in various universities and various research institutions in Europe. The final element that I'll talk about for post-quantum cybersecurity is the use of quantum computing to solve cybersecurity problems. Quantum computing has lots of promises when it comes to machine learning. And if you think about cybersecurity today, it's definitely a data-driven problem. It's an AI-powered domain. And with quantum, we can leverage the capabilities that quantum computing brings to use machine learning for certain problems like cyber hunting, like fraud detection and digital wallet analysis. So this is, what I think post-quantum cybersecurity will look like. In 2035, again, there are other techniques, other approaches that are not necessarily quantum related, but I try to highlight or give you the overview of what is quantum related. But how do we get there? We're gonna go through a big migration journey. And we'll start by adopting post-quantum crypto. A lot of the other technologies are less mature. Probably the most mature one is post-quantum crypto. So, that's what most organizations are working with and towards. And our migration to deploy post-quantum crypto is going to be the largest global cryptographic transition in the history. It's going to be significant for several reasons. Because of the challenges it involves, challenges in terms of the size of the migration itself, because it impacts a wide range of applications, a wide range of protocols, billions of websites, and pretty much all of our internet infrastructure. But also because of the complexity of the problem. The new algorithms, the post-quantum crypto algorithms, have larger packet sizes. So, by encrypting using those algorithms and sending packets, we may have to work with certain paths on the internet. We may achieve the maximum path units on certain routes. So that would introduce certain latencies, which means we have to think about trade-offs between performance and security, and that all has to be studied, right, and analyzed before any big deployments. We need to perform security assessments and cryptanalysis. That work has been started by NIST and requires really the collaboration of the entire community. We need to think about dealing with legacy systems. Think about problems of open source implementations of the new protocols that will leverage these post-quantum crypto algorithms. We need to think about embedded systems and the deployment of the new protocols in embedded systems and in systems where there is a different threat model, if you will, a physical a threat model related to physical attacks. Obviously, you need to think about the prioritization, which applications will have to migrate first, and how do we deal with audits and proving end-to-end quantum safety. So lots of things to think about, lots of things to analyze and evaluate. And we don't have a lot of time. We've gone through PQC, not PQC migrations, but crypto migrations before, and we know they take a long time. This one is estimated to take, 2 decades for the entire community. So we got to start immediately, right? How much time do we have? You've seen this graphic before, so I won't delve into this, but the idea is that pretty much we have to start today. So as agency leaders, you probably have started your journey. There was a White House mandate published last year. A lot of the agencies have been working towards building or creating their crypto inventories. For agencies operating NSS, the deadline for building that inventory was July of last year. For all other agencies, the deadline is this month. So hopefully by now you have your crypto inventory and that you're well ready to start your post-quantum migration journey. Besides building your inventory, what is recommended is, at least what I recommend to my clients, is to define your crypto agile strategy. How do you want to plan your migration, and how crypto agile do you want to become by the end of this journey? Once you have your strategy in place, it may take you a few years to adopt that strategy and to start your migration. And hopefully by 2030, you'll be already quantum safe and you can focus on continuing or maintaining your crypto agile posture. Now, when I talk about an agility approach, this is a continuum. The crypto agility can be defined as coarse-grained or as fine-grained as you want it to be. You can start with a hybrid approach. That would be the coarse-grained approach, if you will. And then over time, you can reach a state where you can define the crypto, the protocols that you use instantaneously as you negotiate sessions between two parties. There are 5 activities that I recommend you consider today as you embark on your quantum safe journey. The first thing is looking at your PKI infrastructure and planning the remediation of your public key infrastructure. The second is that you start working with your vendors to understand their timelines in terms of becoming quantum safe or offering quantum safe products and services. The third is thinking about your crypto agility strategy. The fourth recommendation is that you look into your application development process and adopt crypto agility within that SDLC process. What can you do to abstract crypto from your code, right? From your code base. And then the fifth recommendation is to make sure that you have the right vulnerability management, governance, and rules in place because these quantum crypto vulnerabilities will be part of your vulnerability management system at some point. So hopefully by now, I'm sure for this audience, you are familiar with these post-quantum cryptography myths, but just to summarize them, agencies must understand quantum science to embark on a post-quantum crypto journey. The answer is no, obviously not. Do they need quantum computers? Of course not. You don't need a quantum computer. You don't need to understand quantum science to adopt the new NIST standards as they become standardized. You can start today, right? There's nothing preventing you from starting to plan your journey today. It's not the responsibility of cloud service providers to make your infrastructure quantum safe through GovCloud. A lot of this really relies on the agency sides. And then we don't have much time. Y2Q, maybe in 2035 or even beyond, but still, this post-quantum crypto migration will take a lot of time and a lot of preparation, and the recommendation is that we really start as soon as possible. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
No questions? All right. Very
Right?
well done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. One more round of applause for dealing with all that AV issue. That was terrible. And then does anyone know where the original laptop went? It's going to be one of those days, folks. Oh, here he comes. So up next we have Bill Becker, CTO from Thales TCT. He's going to be talking to us about post-quantum and CSfC. So now what? Should be a great bridge between today's conversations and tomorrow's conversations. And we'll just get his slides up here.
Was it PDF or PowerPoint? So is this one? Yep.
And look at that. We're off to the races.
Thanks, Dominic. Appreciate it. So I kind of figured it would be kind of one of those days with IT and issues when you go to Starbucks and their coffee machine doesn't work. I'm like, this is Starbucks. How can your coffee machine not work? So hopefully we can get through it today. So again, Dominic introduced me. So I'm Bill Becker from Thales Trusted Cyber Technologies. So we're a U.S. provider of cybersecurity solutions. So we have a number of products in the CSfC realm. So a lot of you, I think, in this audience today are here for tomorrow's session as well. So we can talk about that as well. So usually when we start these presentations off, and I've been doing these for a number of years now, and a number of my colleagues in the room have done the same thing, we get into this fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and we spend 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes about, you don't want to be in the headlines. We talk about Shor's algorithm, right? So I think we kind of get all that, right? So most of us, we went through, some really good summaries this morning already. So we're not going to get into that, right? So when we at Thales talk about quantum safe strategy, we really go at it from four positions, right? Kind of a 4-point strategy, right? First, quantum is coming, right? PKI-based classic crypto will be becoming obsolete. Okay, we get it. We went through that this morning, right? Know your risks, right? So we went through Moscow's theorem, right? Harvest and decrypt, right? Your data's at risk. Great summaries this morning already. We've been through. We get it, right? At least I hope we do after this morning. Crypto agility, right? The last session, right? So we just went through crypto agility as well, right? And what that means. So I am going to spend a little bit of time talking about kind of our view of crypto agility and some of the things that are going on now, and kind of a little bit of a different take on how some of the stuff in CSfC, as we get to at the end, is handling some of the crypto agility aspects. And then finally start today, right? So this is really, we've heard a lot of discussion this morning specifically about, some of the policies, and I'll go through a little bit of those too. But, what else is really going on? What's industry doing? We understand what NIST is doing, what NSA is doing, some of the policies that are coming up, but what's industry doing to start today, and what should vendors and customers be doing? So what I have here is kind of loosely an agenda, right? So there's a lot of activity that's going on within the PQC world, right? So we start at the top, right? So there's, the algorithms were selected for standardization in 2022, right? And there's NIST, PQC standardization we heard this morning, right? That's on track for 2024. So what's going on in those 2 years in the middle? Are we sitting around doing nothing, right? Absolutely not, right? There's a lot of different activities going on. Federal policies, so I'll give you my take on that. We heard about that a little bit this morning. Crypto module industry groups, right? So there's lots and lots of activity in this area. So starting with conferences like this, PQ Cyber Day, CSfC Day, it'll come up. They're talking next door about CMMC and post-quantum, right? The International Crypto Module Conference, right? That's a huge annual conference. I think a number of people probably in this room have attended that, and basically in this forum, and goes international every other year. So that's a great conference. Lots of activity there. Cryptographic Module Users Forum. That's another group that's working. They're the actual implementers of crypto modules, so they're actively involved in in adopting these emerging standards. NCCoE, Bill will be talking about that next. And there's other ones too, right? So there's lots of industry groups going on you can participate in, monitor. Standards organizations, this was mentioned a little bit today. There's lots and lots of international standards organization work going on. I'll go through a couple of these in a couple minutes from IETF and OASIS. We've heard about the NCC, or the CNSA suite, so I'll go into that a little bit today. And then CSfC, so we'll go in to dig a little bit about what their view was, or one of their sets of requirements that came out last year. So all leading us a lot of work to do before the standards are even finalized. So NIST PQC status, I'm not going to go into it. So that was covered already this morning, and Bill is following up after me, and he's going to go through some NCCoE stuff. So I'll leave that to the experts to go through. PQC-related activity from the federal policy. So we won't go through all this. So this chart, summarizes things in a little bit different way, and we've heard people touch on all of them. Kind of what's interesting in my mind as we put this together is the consistency or repetitiveness, depending on your position, right, of the different policies, right? So it started off with NSM 10 or even maybe NSM 8, right, back in May 2022, right? So it kind of set the stage, outlined the policies, required NIST, required NSA to do some work, right? That was followed up by the OMB memo, right, 2302, right, which basically says you have to go inventory your crypto, right? And then follow that up, so it's not enough for just the White House and OMB to come up with policy, so Congress decided they had to get in on the game, right? So they passed a law signed by the president. So great. Surprisingly, we actually have all different branches, Congress and the White House, all agreeing on the importance of preparing for this post-quantum world, right? So it's actually pretty impressive that they can actually all agree on stuff. So we're kind of excited about that. And then the last one really is one that came out recently, and it's the National Cybersecurity Strategy. So this is a higher level cyber policy that came out of the White House, I believe. But it did have a specific section. There's a whole section, Strategic Objective 4.3, Prepare for Our Post-Quantum Future, right? And so that goes into, and we'll talk about, some of the other policies. So this is kind of a high level. I'm not going to go through them in detail. So I have my own favorite quotes, right? So I think this morning, Dr. Stern was talking about the NSM 10 and basically said that, that required NSA to come out with a policy from which they made CNSA 2.0. So from my perspective, the important thing in here is that people should be conducting tests with commercial equipment, right? So we are getting the commercial equipment ready, right? So we're working on it now. Bill will talk about some of the work we're doing with NCCoE. So we encourage customers to work with us in pre-standards or lab environments, beta code, whatever you want to call it, to understand what we're doing and work on your use cases, right? So it's kind of one of the highlights from NSM 10. Again, in the OMB 2302, it was just mentioned in the last presentation, right? So they must have a prioritized inventory of information systems, right? So basically, each agency is required to say, this is what I need to do, this is what I need to change, right? And what's interesting, right, is that it actually talks about the testing of PQC, right? It's one thing to say, okay, yeah, you need to go get ready, right, and know what you need to change. It's the other part of it that we don't always focus on, is that they're actually required to start testing it, right, which is, they're not supposed to be testing or you're not supposed to release product until the standards are developed, and you really can't, right? But there are some things with beta code and proof of concepts and things like that are possible, and there's a lot of that out there that's going on. So I'd encourage you to work with your vendors, and the vendors are working together to make this possible. And then the last one, right, was the actual law, which again, just emphasized this fact that, first it was an idea and a policy, and now it's a law, right? So it's all the same with different colored pencils, as they say. So let's change directions a little bit. So, to standards organizations. So there's a number of different standards organizations. I've picked a couple here that I'm more familiar with. So the first is IETF, right? And we've seen the kind of the charts that show, or the word charts that show all the different protocols and algorithms that IETF is responsible. What I find most interesting, and I would encourage you to go look this up, is the PQUIP, Post-Quantum Use and Protocols Working Group. So this is kind of a guidance working group, and I applaud IETF for creating this, right? There's, I don't know, probably 10 or 20 different standards and working groups involved in IETF, all trying to adopt or adapt to the post-quantum world, creating their own standards, doing things different ways, using different terminology, waiting for NIST, right? And this group actually kind of has a summary, right? They actually they're producing artifacts that are like a good document that like lists actually all the activity going on in IETF and where you can find more information. So if you really want to see, if you're not an IETF expert and you want to see what's going on, I would highly suggest, taking a look at this or getting involved and drill down from there. You can really see the relationships between the different organizations, and sometimes even conflicts between different organizations. The next one is OASIS, the PKCS11 Technical Committee. So we've got some people that are involved in that technical committee. So this one is specifically important to us, right? It's the standard, the API standard for cryptographic devices, right? So as an application talks to a cryptographic module, whether it's an HSM or a smart card or whatever it is, right? They're going to use this or a software library. They're going to use this PKCS11 standard. It's been around for a long, long time. It's basically being updated for this post-quantum stuff. So right now, in where it's at, last time I checked, a couple weeks ago, is 3.1 version is in public review. This actually includes an API for the hash-based signatures for LMS and HSS. So we'll talk about that in a little second, in a minute as well. They're also, in discussions about what to do with the standard and the API in regards to the other PQC algorithms, right? Dilithium, Falcon, Kyber, et cetera. So that's another one to keep an eye on. But here's a couple. I imagine that all the other ETSI, ISO, they all have got their own thing going on as well. So good luck trying to keep up with it all. But here's a couple of good summaries for you. So we talked already this morning about CNSA 2.0, right? So it was released in September. We mentioned the symmetric key, right? The change to allow SHA 512, right, was a minor change, right? So as an industry provider, we were actually encouraged to see this coming towards us, right? So working in the product management side as well, like we sit and we talk to the engineers, they're like, they don't know where to start, right? They're all frazzled. They're like, well, which one do I do? There's 4 algorithms. There's 5 different key sets. I don't know what to do, right? We actually got this nice guidance from NSA that said, look, pick these 2. We want Kyber and Dilithium and level 5. So it's really easy to go to the engineers and say, look, if you're going to do anything, start with these, right? And then we'll catch up with Falcon and Sphinx Plus, later on. We can wait for those standards to be developed. So it was actually encouraging to get that advice. And it makes things a lot simpler. Those of you that maybe lived in the IPsec world and IKE world realize the complexity of multiple cipher suites and interoperability. So having it pared down to a manageable set or defined set definitely helps. The last one here is, and Dr. Stern talked about it this morning, right, is the software and firmware signing, right? So honestly, this one kind of surprised some of us, right? So we were all focusing on the PQC coming out of NIST, and lo and behold, NSA comes out and says, no, you're not signing with Falcon and Kyber, right? We want you to sign with hash-based signatures, right? And the protocol or the algorithm is a FIPS standard, right? It's developed, right? So it's available. They actually recommend, right, as we saw this morning, LMS 256.192. All right, so this is an interesting one, and I'll talk a little bit about more of that in a second. So I don't know. I think we might have to take bets the over under on the number of times we'll see this weekend. I'm guessing. I think 12. I'm thinking the over under is around 5 between today and tomorrow. So I think we're at 2. So find me tomorrow night at 5, and But it's a powerful message, right? So we've got our favorite quotes out on the left side, right? So do things immediately, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to go into detail on that. We've gone through that. Plus, I got to get us back on track for 11:45. So stateful hash-based signatures, right? So what wasn't really mentioned this morning, right, is my interpretation of NIST or of NSA's selection of that, right, is the immediate availability of it, right? So when you think about it, we had talked about this for quite some time when we were planning our products. It was like, well, in a crypto agile world, you want to be able to update your algorithms, right? And to have post-quantum algorithms, right? And it was even mentioned this morning. We don't know what our adversaries may have already, right? So Y2Q could be sooner than we realize, right? By the time it comes public, there could be some kind of nation state that already has done harvest and decrypt and has stuff, right? So in that case, right, what's the most, you say, well, that's great, but I'll just update, everybody's going to be crypto agile, I'll just update my firmware, update my software. Well, the problem is all your firmware and software are signed with those same vulnerable algorithms, right? So what are you going to do, right? So how can you update to a non-vulnerable algorithm when it's signed by a vulnerable algorithm, right? So what they've done, right, is said, look, the immediate thing, and they even say it in their guidance, is you got to start right now, right? Start moving to oops. Oh.
Give it a minute. That's got to be the laptop. You might need to restart your PowerPoint.
All right, let's try this. Oh, look, it just went right back to the same spot. Right, so, right, so the idea is you got to update it like soon, right? And so they selected a different algorithm set that exists today, right? So the challenge with these schemes, right, there's a couple challenges. One is that you have to maintain state, and that state basically, even in the standard and in CNSA 2.0, it talks about maintaining state in hardware, right? So that's one aspect of it, right? So software libraries aren't going to do it, right? So there's actually ways in the standard they describe how to do it. So it's not a huge challenge because it's described on how to do it, but it's still a challenge, right? And it's actually relatively new technology. We talked about how long these things have been studied. It's only been published since, approved since 2020. I mentioned before, P11 APIs just adding support right now in 3.1. I really don't believe it's used by a lot of code signing tools or supported yet, right? So that's another challenge. And then I'll go one step further. From what I know of software development, firmware development, I think a lot of DevSecOps teams use their own tools, right? So they've got their custom tools, their own code they use to, get ECC or RSA keys, right? That whole infrastructure, DevSecOps, is going to have to be rethought, right? So this is, I think, a pretty disruptive area, right? And it's outside the realm of, the NIST standards of the new PQC algorithms. It's something they've had already, and now it's being mandated. So it's an interesting thing. So the last topic I wanted to talk about is what CSfC did. So last year, I believe at this conference, maybe a little bit before, right, they talked about this idea and they published what they call the Symmetric Key Management Requirements Annex, right? And what this is this really applies to, I think there's a lot of CSfC people in the room, 3 capabilities packages, whether it's mobile access, multi-site connectivity, and campus WLAN, right? And what this has, right, is it defines ways to basically be quantum resistant today, right? So we started this off by starting today, right? I'll use the word hybrid loosely, but it is a method, kind of a hybrid method to be quantum resistant today. And what it does is it mixes pre-shared keys. It mixes asymmetric keys with other authentication methods, right? In the case of MACsec, it replaces the asymmetric keys with symmetric keys. In the case of IPsec or IKE, right, that RFC 8784, which is approved, right, basically mixes in what they call a pre-placed key, right, or a pre-shared key, right? It mixes it in with the authentication of PKI, and they basically use that kind of as a hybrid method to do the authentication. So it's pretty cool. So now you've got a quantum-resistant solution that you can deploy today, similar to how you could deploy hashful state, signatures, right? You can deploy this today. And this is what CSfC has done, right? They've mandated, or they've added this requirements, and again, it's for long-lived data. So we talked about that before, right? So it's data that's required for, I think, the thing says 20 years or 25 years or national security data. So there's this context. If you've got long-lived data, you have to do this, right? So what that introduces, right, is what you would think is kind of another hard problem, is how are you going to manage the keys for it? So they actually come up with this term called the key generation solution, right? And they have got a set of requirements in there which are pretty specific about, things that the key generation solution has to do, right? So it's got to be FIPS validated or NSA approved. It has to be able to, create strong entropy. It has to be, able to support two-person integrity, et cetera, right? So it's a nice standard, or nice policy requirements document. So we take a look at that. It's like, okay, so all right, well that's all new. This whole key generation solution and these new requirements. It's like, well, yes and no, right? So some of us outside the CSfC realm have been working on this problem for many, many years, right? And there's lots of solutions that exist. We've been handling symmetric keys. We used to call it in silos, key management silos. So each product would have a key management, it would have their own key manager, right? We've gotten to the place in industry now, we've got a number of products out there that are key management servers and have HSMs as a root of trust. And they're able to handle all these different, what we call connectors or storage systems, virtual environments. Most of those, I mentioned OASIS originally, right? OASIS has a standard called KMIP, Key Management Interoperability Protocol, right? It's a way to get symmetric keys from key manager down to a storage device. Some of these storage systems, these are used for data at rest protection today in CSfC, and they work with these key management systems, right? So my position, right, is that it's just another connector, right? So CSfC key management, right, and all the requirements that went in the key generation solution requirement, it's just another key manager. You can use the same system you have, right, to add another key management piece to it, right? So, you're going to have a, already FIPS validated random number generator. It's got key life cycle. It follows, things will follow the NIST key life cycle management, right? So there's requirements in the CSfC key management annex about multiple admin roles, right? So these managers have that capability, right? They're integrated in with strong authentication, with audit records, two-person integrity support, multiple API methods, right? So, a trusted system integrator can use the APIs to get the keys they want and to basically create a custom solution, right, with these other components, the CSfC endpoints or security devices, right, and provide symmetric keys down to those endpoints. So, again, it's CSfC. We get back to the, as I wrap up here. The start today, right? CSfC, well, they started last year, right? So they said, look, we're not waiting for the new algorithms to be deployed in the protocols. There's things that we can do now to protect our long-lived data, right? So I applaud them for doing that, right? So it's a combination. Well, we can deploy this stuff now, and we can also work at the same time moving forward with the PQC algorithms. So with that, I think we're close to back on time. Yep.
Just, I guess the question, maybe more of a, hopefully not more of a comment, but in terms of the symmetric encryption piece, I think I was a little bit disappointed in both the OMB guidance and the subsequent legislation that it didn't reaffirm the piece on the key protections for symmetric encryption in NSM 10. Any thoughts on that in terms of how we, incorporate that piece in there again to get to what NSM 10 wanted to, was mitigate the risk to cryptographic systems as we're on this 2035 journey?
Yeah, I think the stuff that CSfC has done is a good example. I wish more people would do that, right? So there's other systems that we need to talk about, like storage, right? All the ones that are doing KMIP, right? They kind of have that built in already. So we should be talking more about how those, aren't necessarily as vulnerable as some of the other public key systems. So other than that, I don't have a direct line to go change the NSM 10 policy. But anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Now another Bill, the man, the myth, the legend. I think he's either been spoken to or featured in every presentation thus far this morning. We have Bill Newhouse from the NCCoE coming up. Is yours a PDF or a PowerPoint? And off we go.
Cool. All right, so one thing I appreciate in any bit of learning is that hearing it more than once makes it start to stick. So we've had some good iterations on that, and it's valuable because this is very complicated space that we're talking about, and some people make it sound like, oh, we got this, and other people make it sound like there's no way you got this, and there's a balance in between those two things, and questions like, hey, why aren't you talking about this thing that I care about? You are all on different parts of what I call a hero's journey to figure this out with us, right? And where are you going into this? What's the next decision you make because you've learned something today, or that you're doing something in your own spaces? So I forget when I signed up to do this and was asked to come here, they said talk about applied cryptography, and we have a few projects at a place where I work, which is the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, which is an applied cybersecurity center that NIST has had for coming on about a decade now, where we try to do projects with collaborators, with industry people. We sign cooperative research and development agreements. We build stuff. We do stuff in a lab environment, and we try to share it to you in this Special Pub 1800 series called Practice Guides. So that's the context of what I'm doing here today with you. It references what we've been talking about really quickly. But overarching thoughts is that at the center, we define a problem, we assemble a team of people to work together, we build something, we advocate what we're doing together, and it's formed by this engagement model. This project is a little bit unique because the standards are still being developed, but we've decided that as a complementary action, it's worth doing to start thinking about how hard this is going to be and what we can tell people to do today. So this is who we are as a center, and at the center we've labeled these 4 projects to be applied cryptography projects, and I probably do need my reading glasses. No, I got this. And from left to right, the one I'm going to focus on is the one I'm co-leading on the left, but there is also a project ongoing with TLS visibility. There is a project going on with automation of the CMVP program, and a more complete project on earlier server certificate management for TLS. And I'll give you a quick bullet about the 3 that I care less about because I'm not leading them, so you just know that you can come to this NCCoE and learn more and find what they've written about. So at the center, we have these practice guides I've talked about, 3 kind of builds in them, which is a high-level executive summary, and then a more detailed why we did this, why we picked these ingredients, who we'd work with, what they bring to us, so that we can, and I do talk fast, apologies, so that we can figure, you know why we're cooking what we're cooking, and then a very detailed operator and engineer's description of all the yeses and nos within the software, screenshots of everything we've integrated and built in our laboratories, so that if you want to try to rebuild it yourself, you could. You could also point out that if we have a publication like this and your technology does what the technology we used does, you can point at that and say, NIST says this is important, and we do what that did. That's complicated, but you can figure that out. We can also do playbooks, we can do papers, and we're, in this particular migration and any of these cryptography projects, we believe that we're working with collaborators and ourselves who have opportunities to go and communicate with those standard bodies. Dustin had a really good slide about all the standard development organizations. Bill just had in their stuff. IETF came up actually in every conversation so far as an example. We can do things like create proof of concept codes. We can do we can do fancy things within the lab in those spaces down there. And we have a community of interest where we communicate prolifically. So if you're not on the community of interest for any of these projects, you can individually visit our website, click on these boxes, and be taken to the opportunity to know what we're doing beyond what I'm telling you today. We do webinars and public events, so know that you can invite us to join you, and we'll say yes if our schedules allow. All right, now TLS visibility. Where does it stand? They have a guide that is talking. The guide summarizes how to do the planning to use commercially available technologies to build key management-based solutions for TLS 1.3 visibility. They've put out their executive summary. So I got to read my own slides. At the bottom here, 1837A is out for public comment. So if you care about TLS TLS visibility, read through that volume A. It's very high level, describes what the project aims to do, the problems that it wants to address, and some of the potential tactics that are already being thought about with the collaborators that they've agreed upon to take on as an action. So this is what the cover sheet looks like. Deadline says in June, right? Okay. CMVP has established collaborators. So in the sense that they're in the build phase, they've really just got together. They've got this group signed with CRADAs. CRADAs are cooperative research and development agreements. They take a while to get going. Now they bring the teams together and they start saying, okay, what can we do to advance CMVP and automate it and make it meet the needs in a timely fashion. So different contributors bring different things to that model, and that's where this one stands. And I'm happy to introduce you to any of my colleagues leading this one. As they get closer to actually building, they're going to put out a volume A like the previous project, and you'll have a chance to argue with them at that point about the plans that they wish to have. This is a project that is older. It's final. See the final word in the cover sheet there, which means they went in and they spent time talking about TLS server certificate management and offered you some strong advice and some strong opinions about some of the best things you can do in this space. And you can use this document now to walk around and say, we need to do this too. Okay, we're an enterprise. I want to do this. So that's the third of 4 cryptography projects, applied cryptography. Now the one that I care about because I'm leading it. We've heard all these words before, NSM 10 up in the first couple bullets there, but we're going to work on, we're going to start tackling those challenges that have been starting to be asked about, talked about by everybody who spoke, to figure out how to adopt, implement, and deploy in this space, the post-quantum cryptographic algorithms that have been identified and the ones in the future too. So this is a project that has a long period of work. We're just starting, and so we've been working, going out. We've been to some IETF meetings. We've been to the ICMC here last year. We've trying to communicate prolifically. My colleague Maruja Supaya and I are the 2 co-leads at NIST. We have collaborators in the room, both versions of Thales. Raise your hand. You just met Bill. Gina, raise your hand even higher. Somewhere in the back, David, are you here yet? David Ott from VMware, he's a collaborator as well. They were clever enough to notice that when we said we're going to do this project about a year and a half ago, they wanted to join us. And so they asked, and we have a process through the Federal Register where you get notified about projects, and they said, we'd like to come and join you, and they submitted a letter of interest, and we engaged them and said, yeah, you'd be great collaborators. Because we just put out, and I'll show you in a second, our Volume A document that says we're doing something as a preliminary draft, people are adding to that, hey, we want to be part of this. We're not closed at this point. We can invite new collaborators in. It's kind of a manageability expectation. How many people can we communicate with? But we want to communicate really prolifically, so we're open to others who wish to join the collaboration. And we're focused on discovery, because that's something you can do today to prepare yourself for the migration. So whether you know anything about the algorithms or not, knowing what you're doing today and which cryptographic algorithms you rely on and where is interesting. And many of you know what that means when I say it, but lots of other people have a vague idea of it, and some people have no idea. So we're going to be communicating at different levels of what does it mean to do discovery. We have discovery tools from some of the collaborators in our lab. We're not doing consumer reports where we tell you to buy a Subaru when we're done with this, or a Toyota. We're going to say, if you bought a hybrid car, here's the advantages in this space of doing, I'm using bad metaphors and analogies, but the idea is we're not going to tell you that a Subaru is better than a Toyota, but we'll say hybrid cars do get more gas mileage because we prove that in our lab. So in understanding how the discovery tools work and where they work, we're going to be pretty much giving you a matrix of options to think about for your own organizations. And the vendors are running directly to the government clients to have to respond to the M2302 memo. They're going straight to them and saying, I've got discovery tools. And that's fine. We're gonna get this publication hopefully in front of you by August, and we're gonna have a public event in Rockville where we sit to talk about it a little bit more, and you can maybe get some demos there. But discovery is our first work stream. And then the second work stream that we agreed to work on together is interoperability and performance. And Bill's slides about HSM usage for different things points out that everybody wants to try different protocols to see what happens if you push these algorithms into them. So TLS, SSH, Quick, X.509 has a full IETF hackathon going on, and they're making all these cool decisions. We have many collaborators participating in that hackathon, and we're having great conversations, really open conversations and brainstorming. What can we do this week? What can I enable, and what can you enable? And we make it happen together in our labs, or we connect to people's clouds to do this stuff, and it's pretty interesting, and figuring out what to share with you in that space is something we aim to get that material in front of you again by mid-August, so you can have a first review at it. Yeah, so that's the project in a 6-7 bullet nutshell. The discovery work stream is focused in can we do code discovery in the code development pipeline? Should we do it there? Yes, and if you're using CI/CD kind of things, what can we talk about that would help you protect that block of code, and to know that within that block of code you're using good crypto? Those are all good questions to answer if you're in that space. And so that's a tool there is examples of that we'll be able to talk about. When looking at operational network services and protocols, that's scanning your network traffic, that's scanning PCAP files. I was going to say CPAP, that's because I don't sleep great, but PCAP files, and that's going to be interesting. The vendors who sell these discovery tools already that are collaborators with us, when they showed us their demos, they find that people are still using MD5, still using SHA-1, and there's documents that NIST has put out saying, please don't, right? But you find that when you go look for it, you're going to be all over the place. And then looking within the operational systems and applications, Giuseppe here asked me earlier about TPM and post-quantum cryptography, and my answer is, oh, wait, TPM to me is like a big key store or a little key store, I don't know how to call it that. And yes, we're examining like what happens when you make a call into a key store or certificate store, but there's other papers. We're going to grow into all these spaces so that we can hopefully identify a discovery tool for you and the advantages of looking in those three places. And then figuring out how to normalize and correlate that stuff. We have a lot of conversations about a common output format, and that's silly stuff and important stuff. Do I use the right words that will match up with the other tools? And if we do it all the same way, it obviously will feed into more tools more elegantly. So Serif is Serif's a particular format for putting stuff together in that data, the data into a format, and it's one example we're probably going to play with just to show you, the value of trying to come to common agreement. Correlation, so we can put it into a RISC tool. We haven't turned on a RISC tool in our lab, but we think we should, so that we can put some of this stuff into a RISC tool and at least give you some advice maybe, or just show you what happens when you do. That's scale and scope that we may not have in our lab environment to do in a deep way. But the goal is to, if you know something about the criticality of data, you have a RISC tool that you should be able to do prioritization. The memo that came out last November for the US government really said, tell me about your high value assets. And then they gave them a spreadsheet to say what crypto algorithms are supporting your high value assets. That's not easy for everybody to answer quickly. And that spreadsheet had some misleading fields that were automatic pull downs. And so it wasn't our great first attempt at education, and the federal people who have those leads are still trying to figure out what's the most important questions to ask, so that we can, maybe come to all the vendors with a better list of how do I do this, what's the thing to answer, and how do I look in these black boxes. One thing that has popped up in the conversations in this space is SBOMs. You may not love the idea of software bill of materials, but it's kind of maybe you didn't ever care about the the things on your on food that tells you what the ingredients are. I'm losing the word, but it's nice now if you know you can't eat gluten, that when you pull up the thing on there, you can say, oh, okay, it's got wheat, I should be careful. Well, CBOM, cryptographic bill of materials, is a concept that has been brought to us through one of our collaborators as well, as something we may explore. And it kind of comes into that normalization space. If we can start talking about technology in a way that gives you the quick answer that you might still need to verify, that will be important. Cool. Trying to think if there's anything else in here. Yes, so Seraph, I've given you a bullet about, and bringing all this technology in the lab is what we've been doing for the last couple of months, but we've been having weekly meetings on discovery and bi-weekly meetings on interoperability and performance, and lots of people show up. It's kind of interesting and fun. I'm learning a heck of a lot, and I'll learn a lot when you guys start asking questions of me and everybody else as we go forward. Deep breath, Bill, slow down. Now, interoperability and performance, high-level bullets here to describe what we're hoping to do. We have software and hardware. We've mentioned hardware security modules, and there's a lot of...
What do discovery tools do?
Discovery tools tell you what cryptographic... Sorry, that's a good question. What cryptographic algorithms that are in your environment, essentially. Your goal is to look in there and go, am I using quantum? The question that to be answered ultimately is, will the tool tell me I have something that's quantum vulnerable? Mark it so that then later you can put it into a risk engine and come out with, of your quantum vulnerable ones, these are the ones you need to prioritize so you can protect your critical data.
Thank you.
Cool. Back there?
Yeah, but I don't see how you do this in an area that's managed by the Department of Defense, at least not in the possibility. We always talk about CSfC as we wanted to, because we care about CSfC, but if you came into our organization, you plug in the
No, indeed.
I'm not even sure if we're allowed to say what that is that gets classified.
Yeah.
Every terminal runs its own.
Yeah, so the memos that are pushing on the... Yeah, well, I'll repeat the question. Sorry. So his question was, why do you do discovery? The first, and I answered that with, so you can make a prioritization about how to think about moving away from quantum vulnerable cryptography. His question is, I don't think you can do this in the DoD classified and intelligence community environments, and it'll be hard in the non-national security environments too, because the tools will trigger and say, wait, what is this? What is running? So there needs to be a coordination within the CIO and the CISO's shops to figure out how do you integrate these tools. And I bet some folks here might want to raise their hand, and you go ahead if you want to, Phil. Raise your hand and say, I think I'm going to help you with that because I know those people in those environments. You can raise your hand later, but there are integrators and folks who want to help with that, and it does take the question over to, if you're doing discovery, should you do it as part of your CDM? Should you do it as part of your zero trust architecture drive? That is another memo that says, go tell me about your high value assets. The answer is yes and yes, but you can't run a host-based security service tool without it being approved to be put onto the network.
Yeah, the way to do this is you just go to the NSA and ask them which of the type 1 that they were approved that meet this. They have all that
Right.
information. There's only like, I don't know, 30 or 40, and so why would you have...
Yeah, Morgan,
Go talk to them.
Yeah, so he's saying I need to go talk to Morgan, and so Morgan, when the algorithms, you want to come back up, you can. No, agreed. It is not trivial, and the rules that the Committee for National Security Systems and organizations like Morgan's will push in front of people through CNSA's next numbers will define that for you. So discovery at the DoD IC level is not our target space yet. Kind of relying on the conversations that start today. It's a good one to start. How would you do it? Who's going to be empowered to do it? And as you aggregate this information, how scared are you that you're putting it out there for people to find? So there is some caution on the M2302 results not to make it all aggregated in a place that isn't CUI high or whatever that magic word is. I work at NIST, and yes, I do have to follow rules, but I'm not an expert on exactly what you're describing. I mean, I did work at NSA before, so I know the huge challenge you're talking about. But that's a good thing to keep bringing up today, later. You've got Rebecca Guthrie coming up later on NIAP, right? And other areas of this conversation, and there's more agenda on this tomorrow as well. So good question, thank you. Other questions about discovery? Cool. And remember not to invite me back next time, so next time you can talk to, how is the DoD going to implement this, and make that a conversation point.
I guess.
Oh, go ahead, Dominic.
Is NIST planning on releasing discovery tools, or are you going to rely on industry?
We're not building any discovery tools, so what we're playing with is what the vendors in our collaboration have in hand, and some of them are open source and being modified to answer the question to somebody called this quantum vulnerable. So we'll point out where you can go get it, and we'll point out what we learned when we used it together with them. I think that's what we're going to publish. But we're not in the business of developing anything in particular. There might be some glue code. If we work it, it'll be us and the collaborators, and it'll be shared in that publication.
Do you use CDM? Are you working with ROS?
Not yet. It's a conversation. The M2302 memo. Anybody here in charge of that memo? Because I actually know you all, but I sort of complained that it asked and rushed and pushed people into the worry space without giving them the calming effect of this is something we're going to iterate on and get better at. And so the recognition of you already have people who worry about these things and they're your allies is not a fully baked conversation yet, and it needs to grow. So that's one reason I'm here is to push that. As if you're a vendor bringing this stuff to people, point out, that this matches your mission already, and it's not something new that's piled on top of everything else. It's already on top of that pile that you love, maybe. All right, interoperability and performance. This one is the vendors in particular recognizing they have an opportunity to work together. One thing I'm discovering is how many partnerships that already exist in this space, and I keep looking at Bill and Gina because Thales with their hardware security modules has already started collaborating and already started, as Bill pointed out, experimenting and doing things. And so one of the things my colleague and Dustin's boss, Matt Scholl, would say is, look, these standards aren't out yet. You can't purchase this and put it in a government system. It's not been validated yet. So don't get too far ahead of yourself, but be happy that people are answering questions about the protocols that you rely on. And so if you have a PKI office, they already understand this probably pretty well, and they're wondering, well, what have you learned? Because we're trying to learn too. At the same time, we're trying to plan. And so I'm not going to do the justice to the details happening here, but you're connecting with things that we rely on every day. This is where people get all kind of like Y2Q scared, like, oh my God, all those things are broken. Well, maybe, that cryptoanalytically relevant computer, does it exist yet? Dr. Evil hasn't told us. It seems less likely that it's today, but it'll be sometime between now and 100 years from now. And if you have important data that you're relying on public key infrastructure to protect, you will potentially have it broken later, and somebody could look through your Sony executive movie planning and see all the bad things you wrote in emails. And if you're North Korea, that was 5 years ago. But anyway, the bottom line is people may be collecting stuff today, and I'm going away from why we're doing this work stream, but this work stream is focused on, hey, these protocols rely on crypto that has been deemed vulnerable to a cryptoanalytically relevant computer. So let's see if we can put the stuff that Dustin's team has put out as selected algorithms after the 4th round, and they'll this summer finalize into a next draft, bigger documents, FIPS documents, right? FIPS documents that say more. And at that point, it's kind of nice to know that people are checking out the new soccer balls to see if they roll and they bounce and they do everything we need to do, and also survive whatever the new soccer ball needs to survive, so the game can continue. Questions about this before I move on? I think I'm doing okay on time.
Fine on time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Dominic. I even set a little alarm on my little Fitbit. So boring stuff, because you can't even read it, is technologies that are built into the lab versus technologies that are coming to be part of the collaboration. On our let me see if I have it on the next slide. Yeah, let me go to the next slide. But ultimately, we have a lab environment, and we're trying to arrange it and use it so that we can set up functional examples of things working. And the slides can be all made available, so that get your picture? Good, okay. Timeline, we began this with a description of a project. Oh goodness, that slide got a little dorked up, but not too bad. The most important part, back right the week of RSA, we put out our Volume A. Volume A is not rocket science. It is really just what I'm trying to say to you here in 2.5 pages, maybe 1.5 pages. So you'd be like, why did I listen to Bill for 30 minutes when I could have just read that? But that's what that paper is, and it has a public comment period. I probably didn't put it in here. In June 6th is our deadline, and lots of people want to engage with us on that. I encourage you to engage with us on that, because when I see people who submit comments, I remember your name, and the next time I see you, I might say, hi, Becky, or hi, Steve. I don't, otherwise you all just look like people. It's a good way to get to know NIST and communicate with us. We have to look at every comment to say, it matters, we might change something. Oh, that is an absolute change we need to make, or we don't care because it's outside the scope, so we're rejecting it, but it creates a conversation that we need to have. And we are going to host an in-person event and hopefully have those volumes that are going to talk about the 2 work streams done in August. So August 15th is our aim, and we'll put out public notice on that through our community of interest, which I mentioned is one of our tactics for communicating earlier. Questions about any of this? Our collaborators. So sometimes when people who are brand new to this new problem and they need to worry about Y2Q for them, or Y2, so I like to point out that, hey, a lot of foundational technology companies are here. Cloud providers, operating system, network equipment technologies, really cool experts, not limited to the United States. We have European and South Korean and Canadian experts with us, which is really cool. Really good team. It may grow. Over on that side is a list of people. I get to claim Dustin as a friend because I'm doing this project. So that's a cool thing. And we rely on what they learn too. And they're learning from us as they go through this too. And, oh, I have that slide twice. I liked it so much I did it twice. Now, actually, I was trying to fix my slides and I forgot to delete the old one because when people give you slides and you keep reusing them, you start to hate them. Our website is easily Googleable. If you want to join the community of interest because you want to hear more about this next week or the week after when we use the email, clever, we have a Gov delivery email list. And you can always hit me with that email and it hits the whole team. And oh shoot, I gave you my email address as well. Bummer. That's it. Questions? More questions? And Luke gets to be between you and lunch, so Luke's got the hard job.
Well, Luke's got the easy job. He's not here.
Oh, well then I'll just keep going. No.
So,
I can show you the internet. You guys want to see the internet?
thank you, Bill. So our next speaker was scheduled to be Luke Morgan. Luke was unable to travel from Texas. I guess thunderstorms. Shocking, right? So we're going to take a little bit extra long break for lunch, unless anyone has questions for any of our experts that have spoken this morning. You guys are an easy group, or you just want a little bit of extra break. So back in here at 1:45, and we'll see y'all soon.